Okay, folks, it's time to check in with our media partners from the voiceofoc.org for an update on what's happening this week in Orange County government and politics.
Here to talk about issues in the news right now, we welcome the editor-in-chief for Voice of OC, Norberto Santana. Nice to have you with us, Norberto.
Maria, Ed, thanks for having me.
We got a good one to start with. You know, there's been a lot of coverage of the homeless population in Costa Mesa, but it looks like they're finally doing something about it. What's going on?
This week, the City Council is very much changing the debate, the discussion in Costa Mesa. They adopted a plan to develop 50 housing units by partnering with the local developer, Wakeland Housing, and a nonprofit named Mercy House. Larry Haynes, who's the executive director for Mercy House, talks about this project as potentially a tipping point for Orange County and how it deals with the homeless issue. The central issue here is that they're moving away from, in Costa Mesa, where they had a very electric debate last year with Mayor Eric Beaver talking about shutting down soup kitchens and talking about homelessness in a sense as a nuisance. They're moving forward now to actually have more concrete solutions in the sense of, again, creating affordable housing that can take families from that safety point and get them back into a mainstream environment. They, again, talk about changing the debate here in Orange County, and they're hoping that other cities follow suit.
Where will it be located, or do they know yet?
That's going to be the next big debate. What they did this week was they allocated the money. A vote on that will come up in May. At this point, again, the next big challenge becomes is where that gets cited. That'll be the next challenge for the City Council to handle that in an open and transparent and effective manner.
Okay. Moving on, also in news, it looks like we have a new county clerk-recorder.
After months of dealing with this vacancy that began last December when Tom Daly, longtime clerk-recorder, was elected to the state legislature, supervisors have been looking to see who would take over. In recent months, Voice of OC did a lot of reporting on Renee Ramirez, Tom Daly's consulting contracts there with Anaheim City Council member Jordan Brandman. There was a lot of questions about how that sole source contract for about $26,000 was let out, and whether the final reports were ever going to be submitted. Ramirez, who was the interim leader there, took over this sort of question. However, it pretty much short-circuited her ability to take over as leader there. What supervisors selected this week was kind of a quintessential American success story. Hugh Wynn, who was at one point a clerk himself in the clerk recorder's office, was appointed unanimously, or I'm sorry, on a 4-0 vote, on a 4-1 vote with John Morlock voting against. He was appointed as clerk recorder. He takes over now in kind of an embattled agency with some morale issues and some audits that are ongoing. He's pledged to sort of fix that situation. We spoke with him after his appointment. He was extremely happy, and here's what he had to say to us about his new appointment.
It goes to show that if you work hard in the county, it makes a big difference. I mean, there's opportunity to grow and to promote within. And I invested 18 years of my career, and I really appreciate, and I believe that's why they selected me, because of my commitment to the county, and I will continue to commit and do a good job for the county and save taxpayers' dollar. And I'm excited too, because for the Vietnamese community, it's an important thing. You know, they get excited, you know.
It is a big thing after Supervisor Janet Nguyen. Hugh becomes the top Vietnamese elected official in Orange County. He will face election again in 2014 when that seat comes back up.
I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions for him as well. Also, moving on, speaking of questions, the Mesa Water District actually is in a really healthy position, but there may be questions as to whether it's too healthy of a financial situation.
True. There's a big debate here, the big question for a government agency, especially after Stockton, San Bernardino, and all these cities that are in trouble. The question in Mesa is the opposite, which is how much is too much of a savings account to have when you're a government agency? This agency has a 5-year plan to move its reserves from $20 million to $40 million, nearly doubling it, at the same time that they have a rate increase for payers that was adopted in 2009. That's raising a lot of questions among some observers, some of them being Orange County's grand jury, which criticized the agency last year for having too much in unrestricted reserves. The question there being is this too much money for board members to have that they can get creative with and start approving different types of projects? We spoke to the leaders this week, today, in fact, at the Water District. They had this to tell us about why they padded up those reserves.
Exactly. But if you're AAA rated, you can be confident that you're strong and that you're going to be able to weather any kind of disaster or economic, situation. So,
Again,
Well, I'm sorry. I was going to actually ask you, is this too much?
the goal there is to protect the credit rating. Some people, again, think that $20 million in cash sitting around with unrestricted things for an emergency is too much. Again, when you're setting these types of reserves, these are the big questions that you want to put to board members when they're running for seats like the Water District, because it's a question that, frankly, is up to an elected official.
You've been in politics for a long time, covering it, and why do we need so many water districts?
Well, this is the other question that the Orange County grand jury, people like Fred Smoller at Chapman University, have raised for years, which is there's just too much government. There's too many of these agencies. They should be consolidated into larger agencies. The question always with that is that they say that a lot of times the best government is very local. Conservatives will tell you that. Large agencies sometimes can be unwieldy in terms of controlling them and getting a sense of transparency at them. So really, this is the big debate, and again, it's up to the voters to keep these things in mind when they approve board members.
Okay, talking about sometimes having to look after and find out if it's too big, too small, too much responsibility, too little, anyhow, if it's necessary, and it is. The Orange County Fair Board has been under investigation. What's going on?
Well, they're another issue, a perfect example of how much government here. The Fair Board this week again referred, or last week again referred an issue back to the district attorney and to Governor Jerry Brown, asking them to look into a shadowy state joint powers authority that runs many of the construction projects throughout the state. Their question becomes, again, back in 2009, how the board majority controlled by a Republican group sought to privatize the fairgrounds. Many officials were swept up into this controversy. It continues. The big question now becomes is how this joint powers authority holds money for fairgrounds up and down the state. There are a lot of concerns. This week, auditors told many of the state agencies that they are having trouble reconstructing records. That agency now is under investigation. We'll see where it goes.
Okay, and I'm sure you'll be able to tell us more on that. For more on these stories and other political news throughout Orange County, go to voiceofoc.org.